down in Philadelphia. This is our second ever CannaGather. It's really exciting. We have a great event today. We're going to have some street who is going to come in quick. I'm going to do our general overview first, which is who here has never been to a CannaGather. So CannaGather, what we aim to do is to connect the movers and shakers in the cannabis industry, to teach you, educate you, and then have you guys meet and work together. We are in 7 different cities around the country, and Philadelphia is a great place to be, so I'm really proud to be a part of it. My name is DiArcangelo. I'm working along with Diane Nickerson, who is our market lead. I'm gonna skip through the sponsors right now and do that at the end just so we can get Center Street in here. But today we are talking about cannabis laws and clinical trials. Center Street has been working on SB 350, which is the adult cannabis use bill, and he represents the 3rd district. So we're going to grab him, and then we'll have him speak about that and jump into it. We are lucky enough to put this on because we have great sponsors, people that do a lot of work within the cannabis CBD industry. So we have sponsoring us today. We have Mind Leaf, some excellent head treats. We have CD Delight, who make CBD drinks. We have Cat's Eye Security, Diane, if you need security. Cat's Eye is your person. We have Minorities for Medical Marijuana and DACO. And I'll have them speak in a second, but for now, we have Center Street if you're ready. All right. Here we go.
How's everybody feeling today? Good. Well, I'm glad you all were able to make it out, even though this weather was off and on not exactly ideal. And I know folks are coming with various levels of knowledge about Pennsylvania's medical cannabis program. How many folks have some fair level of familiarity around Pennsylvania's program? Most folks. Well, as you know, we have a medical cannabis program where we have both growers. We issued 25 grower processor licenses. And then there are a number, and that doesn't include the research licenses. Our research component is one of the things that makes our program a little bit unique, in that most jurisdictions do not have specific research programs. And evidence-based research in the field of cannabis is incredibly important as we go to expand it, because those who are still living in the dark ages and want to continue the prohibition are using what is basically false science around gateway drugs, around the myth that it's going to increase, that legalization is going to dramatically increase underage use, and then I even heard one outlandish comment that cannabis was a hallucinogen, which by believe it or not, a Pennsylvania judge in some county, who said that it was going to cause mass traffic problems because it had hallucinogenic effects. All of which is, of course, bogus science. Cannabis is not addictive in the way that the opioids that we so readily prescribe to people are. Expansion of cannabis legalization, both for medical and recreational or adult use, as we say, is likely to reduce dependency for opioids. Many of the adult use, non-medical cannabis uses are in fact for medical ailments, just not those that would have to be supervised by a doctor. For instance, if your sinuses are clogged up and you go to get some cold medicine, you don't have to go get a doctor to prescribe that. Many of us have had achy joints. We go to get some cream, Bengay, mineralized, whatever you want to call it, to relieve joint inflammation. We don't have to go get a doctor to prescribe it, because there are a number of medical conditions, a number of things that make us uncomfortable, where we seek treatment in a manner that does not require a doctor's supervision. And in a lot of ways, that's how you can I think that is a fair characterization of the way many people would use adult use cannabis. It would be used to relieve problems that folks have that do not require a doctor's supervision, and therefore would be covered by a medical cannabis program. As many of you may have heard, our list of criteria for medical cannabis in Pennsylvania was just almost immediately expanded to now include anxiety, which is clearly something that is more than appropriate. But this is the thing that's time has come. It is economically profitable and it makes sense for the Commonwealth. The Auditor General in Pennsylvania estimates the expansion into adult use would increase a marginal tax revenues for the Commonwealth in the range of $600 million of recurring revenue. Makes sense. It makes sense from a criminal justice equity perspective. As many of you may know, cannabis use amongst people across racial demographics, white, black, Latino, is relatively constant. But African American and Latinos who use cannabis in the same way that their white counterparts use are 4 to 5 times more likely in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to encounter law enforcement, be subject to criminal sanctions. And nationally, it's 6 times more likely. So at 4 or 5 times more likely, Pennsylvania is actually doing better than the national disparities, which are 6 times. But if you move towards legalized adult use, you don't have to worry about disparate effects on law enforcement. And it makes sense just from a civil liberties standpoint. There is not much good reason for us to continue prohibition of cannabis. We now know that much of the Nixon era mythology was driven by a need for the then president to vilify his enemies, political enemies. He wanted to be able to make, quote, the hippies, the blacks, and the Mexicans look bad. And he felt that he could not say bad things about them for just being hippies, black, or Mexican, but if he associated that with cannabis use, then he can vilify the cannabis and thereby vilify them. It is a strategy that has now been exposed by people who were part of creating it. And it was ridiculous, but it was a failed political strategy by a desperate man. And while the strategy failed to revive his career, it somehow lived on long beyond him. And even now that we know that it isn't true and it was false, this mythology persists. And so it's so important that we have conferences like this where we can talk about the realities and talk about the benefits. As a few of you may know, I'm a co-prime sponsor of Senate Bill 350, which would move Pennsylvania into a state that allows adult use of cannabis without medical supervision. There are a few things that the bill does that are really important to focus on. One of them is there is a social justice component that would mandate the sealing of all records associated with criminal convictions that were exclusively cannabis related. There's no reason that we should be handing out licenses, allowing people to use it, and still having other folks walk around with restricted liberties because of past cannabis convictions. And we shouldn't put the onus on the people who are already, in many cases, unjustly targeted to go hire a lawyer to get an expungement. So the bill calls for the state police to automatically seal all those cannabis conviction records, which I don't believe has been done anyplace else. And I think that is an important component. We also suggest a tiering so that there will be some homegrown, in very limited ways. And there would also be micro grown and major grown to recognize the fact that there are different levels of entry for people into the industry. And finally, it sets forth criteria for getting a license. That is, it's like you get a license for, if you want to open up a building, you just have to meet the basic criteria to have a license. And it does not limit it to a finite number of licenses, but it limits it to a discrete set of criteria. And then in Pennsylvania, something that's very important is you would still have to be zoned, so there's still local control, and that local communities could essentially opt out by saying that we're not going to zone facilities for cannabis use. So there's no reason for the backlash of, well, we don't want this in our county. Although I think that the vast majority of municipalities would certainly move forward with cannabis legalization. Because it would be, or at least authorization of those locations, because there's going to be revenue associated with having those locations like any other business in your community. I got into this for a few reasons. One, I thought it was good sense government, and there were the appropriate social justice components. It generated revenue, and it was consistent with basic principles of civil liberty. And I don't think we need to go and make it real complicated beyond that. And the final thing I want to touch on is this. In most of the jurisdictions and the limited science we have around it, you actually see reductions in underage use of cannabis in jurisdictions where you move to adult legalization, in part because the lawful distributors who come to replace the black market for cannabis tend to be a little bit better at carding people for ID to see how old you are than the black market distributors do. And therefore, it's a little tougher for teenagers to figure out how to get cannabis when the black market either is greatly diminished or disappears than it is when that market is robust. Because we all know that cannabis use is widespread today, and not just through the medical program, in every state in the country. But because we have an unregulated market, those folks aren't asking for ID. You're old enough to find them, and you got the money. For the most part, folks will sell you some cannabis. In a regulated market, where people have licenses, it would be a little bit more complicated for underage users to get a hold of cannabis. And my final point is this, and I'll open up to you a few questions. The gateway drug. Cannabis is not a gateway drug. However, cannabis dealers in an unregulated, unlawful environment can be gateway pushers. And a person can go and say they want to purchase cannabis. There are people who are a little bit unscrupulous who'd be willing to lace that cannabis with something else. Something that person didn't intend to ingest, never wanted to consume, but once they've begun to consume it, could become addicted to it. Why would you do that? Well, because a cannabis customer can stop when they're having a financial downturn, stop if they want to do something different. But there are many other much more highly addictive drugs where you can have a captured client, and then you can force that person to have to come and purchase your product, even if it is against their unaltered will. And so what we have in today's market is the opportunity for black market sellers, some of whom are unscrupulous, not that all of them are unscrupulous, but some of whom are unscrupulous, who are then lacing the product of cannabis with other things in order to trick people into being addicted to things they did not want to be addicted to. And so, if you're concerned about cannabis use being a gateway to something, to more serious drugs, you in fact should support the regulation and legalization of adult use, because by doing that we can control how people are receiving it. And it's nothing innately about the use of cannabis that causes you to want to use other drugs. It is in fact because people don't know what they're consuming and are not able to acquire it in a safe, responsible, regulated, labeled way that people can be tricked into being addicted to other things. And it's that same unregulated market that causes the dangers to our youth. And so, for reasons to protect our youth, allow people to more responsibly consume basic civil liberties, economic reasons for the Commonwealth, and finally, with all the social justice components. It is time for us to end the prohibition of cannabis. And we're pleased that Pennsylvania, with the progress we're making with our medical industry, and I am also pleased to stand before you as a sponsor of legislation to end the prohibition of cannabis in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you very much, and I'll take some questions.
What's the biggest hurdle you see in the state of Pennsylvania to getting adult cannabis legalized?
I would say the greatest hurdle is our political fears of legislators created by misinformation that's put out by people who may or may not understand the way it really works. I mean, for instance, we're going to get people who are going to be nervous because of this one goofy comment that some judge made. One court of common pleas judge in one of 67 counties, most of whom have multiple judges. In Philadelphia, probably 100. You got one guy said something goofy about it being hallucinogenic and to cause mass traffic. That's pretty goofy, but there will be people who have constituents that read that are then concerned about casting a vote for adult use legalization. And while I think I think more and more people every day understand the real science. The more we can have forums like this, the more we can get real data out there, the more comfortable it makes some of my colleagues who are a little less bold on this issue to be prepared to do what I believe the vast and overwhelming majority of Pennsylvanians and members of the General Assembly know is the right thing, which is to move towards adult use, the legalization of adult use. But they're just, these things become political speedboats. Yes, indeed.
Thank you. So your micro licenses, I see that dispensary and processing are excluded. Can you provide the rationale of why someone that won't have the opportunity to have that high-end capital would not be afforded a micro license for dispensary and processing?
Well, yeah, because what we're trying to do is lower the barriers to entry. And the theory was that if you had a micro license, you may not want to go through the rigors of testing. And testing and labeling are some of the more expensive components of the process. And if you're going to sell directly to the public, you'd have to have the ability to do testing and labeling. Now, ultimately, what we envisioned was tiered. So there would be, you could have what we call micro, people who don't have to be subject to testing and labeling, and people who would be in the general market would have to be subject to testing and labeling. So there will be some tiering. A lot of that gets fleshed out in the regulations that the department would adopt after we adopted the legislation and authorized them to do that. So where exactly you draw those lines, in some respect, I would imagine that the department would do. But the basic rationale was to remove barriers of entry and to say, look, if you have a product that you're developing, maybe you have an interesting strain or you're doing something that's different, but you're not yet ready to go through the rigors of testing and labeling, then you could sell to a grower, processor, or distributor that is licensed to sell to the public. They would be subject to testing and labeling, and if you grew your capacity, at some point you'd apply for a license that allowed you to do direct sales.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sort of a follow-up to that question. Mayor de Blasio's task force last year released a big report suggesting that you would open more of the industry to smaller businesses if you kept medical separate from adult use, such that current medical licensees can't participate in the adult use market. But it seems in your proposal you want to allow that. Why do you take a different stance than New York City?
Well, we take a different stance, one, because I think there's been significant investment in the folks who purchased those licenses. We don't want to devalue completely. And then two, because those folks already have created some of the backbone infrastructure for a smooth rollout. And we want to remove as much of the chaos as possible. Secondly, I think that from a grower perspective, Pennsylvania has greater opportunities to grow than New York because of just where we're situated on the map. So our land is a little better for growing. So for outdoor growth, Pennsylvania can actually have significant outdoor growth in ways that much of New York State, some of New York State could have, but much of New York State would not be as well situated. So I think that there's some differences. And then as a mayor, I guess de Blasio's only looking at the implications for one very urbanized jurisdiction, whereas Pennsylvania, we're looking at jurisdictions that would be very diverse, and some markets where if you didn't let the medical folks come in, you may not have that much access. Certainly in Philadelphia, that's not going to be an issue. But if you look at the 67 counties and hundreds of miles, thousands of miles of road that go through Pennsylvania, there are some places where it may be more difficult to get someone to locate. And so access to product would be an issue if you looked across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in a way that might be an issue for New York State, but certainly would not be an issue that de Blasio would face in New York City, the densest, most heavily populated place in America. Yes?
Yeah, to your question. First, the need to test cannabis at all and still allowing tobacco to be sold in the city and the state doesn't really make any sense to me since we know that kills people and cannabis for 5,000 years hasn't. But we're now testing cannabis and putting extra scrutiny on something that has never killed anybody. And secondly, the price of cannabis.
Right now, we're not testing it at all, except for the medical space. We're just outlawing it and criminalizing and locking people up for it. We
No, I
propose.
understand it, but then the cannabis at the facilities, I run a patient advocacy group, is so expensive that patients in Pennsylvania can't afford it unless they have a really good job, their insurance doesn't pay for it. Poor people surely can't get it. Doctor's recommendations are $250 to $400, sometimes $500. So what can be done by the legislature to help control the pricing that is, to me, double of what the black market is today, which is ridiculous. The legal market should be half of what the black market is, and it's not. And the access to cannabis for people that really need it is not there. And the program itself, by the way, too, you can't sign up on a mobile device. You have to use a PC or laptop. And the sign up itself is so tedious and arduous that most people give up. So what can be done to make the program, number one, a little bit more affordable and more accessible?
Well, there's a few things. I've introduced a Senate resolution calling on the federal government to readopt the protocols that the Obama Holder Justice Department had allowed, which would allow some limited levels of banking. That may not seem like an issue that the average consumer would think about, but the limitations on access to capital and banking have a tremendous impact on price. Essentially, we have a quasi-legal market because of the legal market where the sale and purchase with the card is legal, but the market must behave in many respects like the black market does, and in some respects even more limited than the black market because of all of the banking prohibitions. Not being able to use an ATM card, you can't use a cell phone because that would be a matter of interstate commerce. And because all IP addresses are under the jurisdiction of the federal government, and as long as cannabis is still a Schedule I drug, there's nothing that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania could do to allow a the use of a cell phone because then that means you're by definition on a cellular network. Cellular networks are regulated by the federal government and therefore beyond the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth or any state to allow folks to sign up on. You can have a closed area network that can be accessed from a PC. There are probably some more advanced smartphones that can do that, but the problem is that will be only if you are on a Wi-Fi signal and not on a cellular signal, because the cellular connection in and of itself would then constitute it to be interstate commerce, which would be violated for federal law and would give the federal government jurisdiction to come in and seize the property of anyone who engaged in those transactions. So, unfortunately, some of the easy access that we think of in terms of technology is limited because it's difficult to access that technology without touching federal commerce. Similarly, some of the challenges around banking are tough because of the Schedule I implications in the federal government. That being said, we have explored in Pennsylvania, because we have a robust state chartered banking program, that if the federal government doesn't deschedule, the idea of moving towards having some sort of state banking system that would allow banking, but then we still wouldn't be able to do ATM uses because ATM uses would still be using telephone lines and data lines that are federally regulated unless you literally laid fiber optics throughout the state that did not connect to the federal network, which would be bizarre.
Yeah, but the internet, they advertise on the internet. The menus are on the internet.
It's different between the menus being there and a financial transaction, and it's not. And I don't believe
The Fed still could come in at any time and arrest anybody in any dispensary today. It's still federally legal, so.
No, it's not. It's not correct.
That is correct. I've been in a dispensary, I've been arrested, been in jail.
Well,
Yeah.
look, the federal government can come and arrest me for standing here talking to you if they wanted to, but it would be unlawful. And I'm been an attorney for a long time. There are well-worn doctrines about where the lines of interstate commerce begin and end. Clearly, financial transactions that involve the use of wires are federal in nature, and that's why we haven't done that. But equally important, because I've explored some of this stuff about pushing the boundaries, I haven't found a dispensary or a bank that is willing to cross that line. So I'm with you. The stuff needs to change. We're thinking about it. We're looking at it. Those issues all need to be addressed. We have a resolution introduced in the Senate to call the federal government to adopt some of those things, and we're exploring what the state can do. But it's tough.
Senator, thank you. Thank you for being here, by the way. We need more of this participation to keep this going and the conversation going. I just wanted to pick up the point from your question at the front about smaller growers, selling into larger companies, the labelling and the testing side. Is there going to be a path for them in the future as testing becomes cheaper and more readily available for those, producers? Can they actually get the licenses themselves, and is there going to be an avenue for that? Because it's really important that we make sure the community is looked after and served, and not just big business, because they'll still control small business if they're growing for them. So we need to have an avenue for them.
So the short answer is yes. That's the entire point of it. And when we say small or big, where those lines should be drawn are things that will be fleshed out in regulations. The reality is that if we tried to do all of that in a statute that has to go through the entire Senate and the entire House, we'd never get done writing the bill. So I think that the administration has been pretty responsible in how it's handled the authority that's been given from a medical space. And so once we adopt it, we've now created latitude where you can have these categories, and the administration would then have to flesh out where the appropriate lines are. We're just creating a situation where there can be two different categories so that all the barriers still exist. And actually, in the summaries that you receive, we don't get into all the details, but the idea is that the department would have the authority to create multiple categories, so it's not just two. There could be multiple tiers of categories. How those categories work, that would be left up to regulations, because we simply would be discussing it forever if we had to do it all by statute, and that's nothing to do with cannabis. It's just the areas that are generally left to regulatory authority versus what's statutory. But the point of where we're going is exactly what you suggest, is that we create an avenue that those folks can eventually get their own licenses and sell directly to the public. And I will note, one thing you mentioned that's really important is that as the industry matures, testing and labeling is going to become much simpler, and at some point you may not need to worry about a different category for smaller producers. But right now, it was identified as a challenge. Yes. And then,
Medical patients, is there gonna be are they able to graduate and take plans because I'm a medical patient, I have another law, she has Alzheimer's, and throughout the day, it's different strains, and you took the same strain or cultivar, a couple days in a row, it's not gonna work as well for your pain or for the Alzheimer's that she has. So the 6 plants really, that would be enough for me, but still not enough cultivars to see the client.
well, each of you would be able to grow 6 plants. Okay, you'd be able to grow 6 and she'd be able to grow 6. You're 2 separate people. Yes.
This gentleman got a question about price control, that's really high in medical arena. In the Medical Marijuana Act, the Department of Revenue is allowed to cap the prices every 6 months. Do you know if there's ever been any discussion as to adding the prices of medical discussions at this point?
I haven't been involved in any discussions about any price caps at this point. I think folks are just trying to get the kinks out of how the program about just the general rollout. But the fact that the department has the authority is, I think, was good forethought on our part. It hasn't yet. I haven't heard of any discussions where the department has gotten too far down the road on price capping. Yes.
I have a question how likely is it that the insurance companies will start paying for the cannabis? I understand the cost, why it's expensive at a dispensary because the quality is tested and people invest millions of dollars to open a dispensary. Obviously, it's going to take everyone's time. So the obvious answer is, why doesn't the insurance pay for it? It just upsets me because they'll pay for opiates, and they'll pay for methadone and Suboxone, but they won't pay for marijuana. It's crazy.
It is. So we in the Pennsylvania State moved out of a committee a resolution calling on the federal government to take the steps to allow the insurance companies to pay. Right now they don't because they believe federal law prohibits them from doing it. And most insurance companies are both state and federally chartered. And moreover, the underwriting tends to be backed by national or sometimes international holding companies, which would be subject to federal regulations. So we have passed out of the Bank and Insurance Committee that I chair at the state senate level in a bipartisan way, legislate a resolution calling on the federal government to allow us to move forward in this way. We've done this with the full support of our insurance commissioner here, and we have even had some dialogue with the U.S. House committee that oversees those regulations at the federal level. And I think that we could get it out of the House and the federal government, but I don't think the Senate is ready yet. The U.S. Senate. But you're right. That's ultimately where we need to go.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Great questions, and accountability to participate.
All right. Let's give it up again for Senator Street. Next up, we have Christina DiArcangelo. It's a little messed up, but she's the CEO of the Biopartners, and I'll let you talk about everything else that you do, because it's a lot of things. Here you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I really appreciate it. And You know, Senator Street talked about clinical research, right? So Affinity BioPartners is a clinical research organization. We started out traditional. Don't hate me, don't throw rotten tomatoes at me tonight. I've been a biotech pharmaceutical executive now for 21 years globally. I know I'm pretty young too, so I started at 5. I'm just trying to make sure we're all still paying attention because it's almost 9 o'clock. Anyhow, we started off Affinity BioPartners as a traditional CRO. So we got into the medical cannabis CBD space about 3 years ago, which was kind of brave for us because we're traditional biotech pharmaceuticals. And a lot of my colleagues laughed when I told them I was getting into this. And it was because they thought I lived in San Francisco for 5 years and maybe I was tainted from 2005 to 2010, and that's not the case. It's because I had seen some of the clinical research that was pumping out 3 years ago. And I started seeing some of the medical advancements as it related to medical cannabis and CBD. It interests me, and we took a big, bold jump into the industry, and we've never looked back. I was never in the closet. When I decided to do it, I did it. I blew my hair back and said, this is what we're doing. My staff that didn't want to do it, they're not with us today, because that's the way it is, right? So we work in clinical research. We design protocols, we monitor, we collect data, which is all very important. If we're going to advance medical cannabis and CBD as an actual viable treatment option that could get insured if you had an FDA approval, because once the FDA approves it, you can get it backed by insurance, right? Because that's the name of the game. So with that said, my team, my executive team, we've worked on 28 FDA approved drugs, 14 devices in our careers. So we have a big, big, long career in this. I started in 2015 Affinity Patient Advocacy. That company is my heart company. I started that because my father passed away at age 62 from stage 4 liver, lung, and stomach cancers. I was his advocate. I have worked on multitude oncology studies throughout my career. My second job was J&J. I worked on Remicade and multiple different products that they were pumping out, Cento 1275, Cento 48, etc. So when my dad was diagnosed in August, late August of 2015, he died in less than 2 months. He was my main supporter, he was my main guy, my number one, my first true love. You'll notice that I have the Teamsters pins on my lapel here, which is odd, right, for a biotech exec to have those. The top one is my dad's. He was a Teamster. He retired from the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Prior to that, he was president of the Steelworkers Union for Phoenix Steel in Phoenixville before it got knocked down, and now there's all these freaking apartments there. Anyway, you can see that, you know, I was raised a laborer's daughter, a Teamster's kid, and so the Teamsters have a cannabis division. And so DiArcangelo is not like Smith or Jones, it's a unique name, and they figured out who I was, circled back to Hoffa, figured out that I was the daughter of Albert DiArcangelo, and now they back all of our companies. So we do a lot of work with them. I don't mean to sound scattered, but I just wanted to tie that part in because that's how APA started. And what we do with that company is we advocate strongly for patients. Originally, we were traditional because it was 2015. We didn't have a Pennsylvania program like we do today. And so we started advocating for patients, going and meeting with doctors, helping them with insurance matters and things from a traditional nature. As I started doing clinical research through the CRO, again, people started following DiArcangelo, and realized I work in medical cannabis and CBD too. So then we had patients coming to us for medical cannabis and CBD support. 2 days ago, I ended up at a local borough. I won't say where, because I want to be, I have a publicist, I have to be careful what I say now. But there's a local borough in Chester County, I'll say that fired an employee who was taking a hemp-based CBD product that had THC in it, popped hot in his urine, and he was fired. They violated his rights under the hemp bill. His test was 0.15. That's all he had. That was it. He didn't even have 0.01 in his system. His test married up to the COA that the product he was taking. So it wasn't like their excuse was, well, how do we know you didn't smoke a blunt? Well, first off, if he smoked a blunt, his THC levels would be through the friggin' roof. It wouldn't be 0.015. So I went in there and talked about the hemp, the farm bill, the regulations, how it works, that they violated our patients' right under the federal law, which is a problem. And not only that, because I grew up a labor kid, I understand there's a union there. I was working alongside their union, not the Teamsters, of course, I'm partial to them, but their union, and I tag team with them to try and fight for this patient's rights. This is unacceptable. This is the second patient this week that had their rights violated. Another patient of ours was in kind of like an assisted living situation. She has fibromyalgia. She asked the nurse to rub her lotion, and she's a card carrier, by the way. She asked the nurse to rub her feet with her lotion, which had THC in it. They took it, apprehended it, and wanted to kick her out. So we got involved in that. This is unacceptable. This is absolutely unacceptable. Patients deserve their rights to be protected. They deserve the right to be able to medicate properly in accordance to our laws in this state without worrying about retribution, being arrested, etc. So that's about APA. The next thing we do is we have an artificial intelligence bot called the Cannabis. Maybe you've heard of him. He looks like a little buddy with the cannabis leaf behind it. And what that does is it's an artificial intelligence technology platform. It is not a chat bot. It can work like a chat bot if we deploy it that way through Skype, but it's voice activated. It works through Alexa and Google. I'm really happy that we've been able to negotiate with them that they would pick our platform up, because initially they didn't want to, because our name of our little guy is the Cannabot. That Canna was the clincher for us. So we have that live now, and what that does is it helps educate patients. Patients do not pay to access that. If you notice, our main concern here between these three companies is unmet medical needs for patients. Research is important to be able to progress medical cannabis and CBD through data. If you don't have data, you can't do anything with it, right? We can't continue to run around with this anecdotal evidence and say, oh, it works for this, or oh, this neck is better. No, we have to research properly through clinical studies. The Cannabis is a resource for that as well. So we're able to capture data from an electronic data capture standpoint. We're able to run questionnaires through it, and we're able to allow the patients to ask questions should they not understand something, or if they want to be pointed to the direction of a dispensary or product. The awesome thing with this is we're launching tomorrow with compassionate certification centers, we consider it in the industry an ePro, electronic patient reported outcome study, but it's a survey for patients. And we're launching it on how we all feel about the Pennsylvania program. What's working, what's not working? What do you like about your wellness coordinator at the dispensary? What is your favorite, who is your favorite dispensary? What kind of insurance claims have you made since you've gotten your card on your insurance? We're looking at all kinds of different things, but the point of it is we're trying to capture information so we can see what we need to improve on and share the data through a white paper. So look for that to come out. Compassionate certification centers, Affinity Biopartners, and Cannabis are going to be sending this out tomorrow, and it'll be live. So if you want to participate, you can contact us and we'll add you to the pool. We're hoping that we can get about 56,000 patients in, because CCC is seeing 50,000, believe it or not, themselves in, so that way we can really do a little pressure test on how we're doing, like a report card. So as you can see, we have the research side of things, we have the technology that supports research, but the technology also supports the patients, and then we have the advocacy side. And then we also have a YouTube channel, which is kind of funny. We started about 3 months ago because I wanted to have a platform to be able to talk to people. I go to a lot of events, I speak a lot, I attend things, but I felt like we needed a platform where we could actually educate the patients and those that have the stigma about cannabis being bad for you, etc. If perhaps they had a place where they could watch something or listen on Apple iTunes, they could become educated, because education is key. So that channel is called Coming Out with Cannabis. You can type in comingoutwithcannabis.com and it comes right up. And on that channel, we have about 26 episodes right now. You'll see patients, doctors, lawyers. We had Patrick Nightingale on, I think it was episode 25, talking about the DUI laws. I won't go into that because that's another problem, right? We had the Teamsters, we've had biotechs, we had all different people. We have people on that we feel can help educate the public. That's our goal. And then lastly, I know there's a lot, right? I sit on the board for the American Society of Cannabis Medicine. I'm really, really excited about that because we are working on a deschedule bill from a federal level. So probably about every couple of weeks, we're down in DC dealing with lobbyists and some of our initiatives that we're trying to do down there, but we're going to be running clinical research, which is huge, right? And we're looking to help various patients in various types of indications across the United States. And we're also going to be formulating a product specifically for two very high, I feel, on the list of patients to help: veterans and laborers. So we're working on that as well, and that our first pain study will kick off hopefully in like 3 to 4 weeks, Pennsylvania, Florida, and California. And that will be pain with veterans, a very easy CBD study. I say easy, 90-day treatment. We'll see how it goes. We'll capture all the data through the CannaBot, and then we're just going to continue on. We're looking at all the various indications throughout all the states so that we can help a magnitude of patients. So that's a little bit about what we have going on. I'm still awake at 9:05. Started working at 5 a.m. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
So, just to piggyback on the access for more communities to access the cannabis, why are we not creating like community centers where we have computer lab-based to those who don't have PCs at home, increasing their opportunities? So would you be interested in partnering with local nonprofit groups to create
Sure.
spaces?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, our priority through APA and all three of the companies, as a matter of fact, I mean, even with the CannaBot, we donate the CannaBot sometimes. I mean, thank God my C-class guys aren't here because they try to hit me and notice I'm looking for them, or that crazy Bruce Brady guy that works for us. He's always around. But no, seriously, in all seriousness, our intention is to help as many patients as possible and work with other nonprofits. There's another nonprofit that we're helping right now who's trying to enroll additional patients in their study. It wasn't our original initiative, but it was brought to us, and because of our relationship, we said, sure, we can help. If we have the ability, we'll do it. If we don't, we'll find somebody who can help. That's what we do. No problem, thank you. Yes?
How do you see the role of clinical trials in an increasingly adult use world, or an adult use nation? We're going in that direction.
I don't want you guys to think I'm not a recreational supporter, but we draw a line in the medical cannabis. We have to stay in that lane, right? So, I mean, how do you know how it's working if you're not testing it, right? So even on the recreational side, I welcome patients from the rec side to come over and be in our clinical studies. You know how much easier it would be for me to enroll studies? Right now, how it works, and I'm not trying to get into the nitty gritty, but I want you guys to understand how hard it is. So Pennsylvania, we just had, hallelujah, 2 more qualifying conditions added, Tourette's and anxiety. So when I design a protocol, I have to look at the qualifying conditions across the entire United States where it's legal. Then I have to figure out how many patients I can recruit with that disease. So in a normal clinical study, say you're studying something for antibiotics, it's so easy to enroll your patients. Do you have blah, 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 and they enroll. With cannabis, it doesn't work that way because the physicians can't touch the product, right? In a normal clinical study, I can send my pills to you in the vials that say test blah, blah, and here, and then the doctor hands it out, right? And the medical cannabis side, that's not how it works. So you have to liaise with the dispensary to get the product. You have to find that pink panda bear in New Jersey. No offense to the New Jersey guys here tonight. I'm not picking on you. I just always say that. And it's really hard to enroll the studies. The good thing is we have the AI technology. So I have a patient recruitment tool, which is probably a no surprise, that I can look for patients that way if it's really hard to enroll. So I think if the recreational market opened up, it would be easier for me to enroll my study in short form. Sorry it was like a long, but I have to watch how Yes.
So how many clinical studies are underway at the current time, and what universities are you working with?
So without consent from our clients, I can't release who we're working with. I'm not trying to dodge your question, but what we're doing right now, so we can talk about the pain study, that I'm allowed to talk about, right? Those are private institutions we're working with. I can tell you that it's compassionate certification centers. There are research partners in Pennsylvania from the private sector. They also work alongside some of the universities as well that are trying to do research to help supplement the patients. Because let's think about this. Universities, they're not seeing these patients really, right? How are they going to enroll this study? They have to work with the private sector physicians to enroll your study, otherwise you're bombed. And your timelines are out, and you're spending money, and it's just rolling.
Well, I run a large community on Facebook, Marijuana PA.
Oh yeah, I'm part of your group.
Okay, great. So for me to reach out and say there's a study going on, MS patients going on, well,
Yeah.
how would I even know about that, and how do we?
So that's a good question, actually, because we just sent some flyers out that were IRB approved, Institutional Review Board. I talk in a lot of acronyms. It sounds like alphabet soup, and it's too late for that tonight. But I have a flyer that we're helping an organization through CHOP enroll the autism study, right? That's been going on. Okay, that's me. That's who posted that in your group.
Okay, good.
So we're very good about communicating that, right? And Affinity Bio Partners is going to start putting the studies that we're running on our website as well. And coming out with Cannabis, we'll have those sponsors. We call them sponsors, like the biotechs and things that are backing studies in the industry. We call them sponsors. They'll be on, but we have a good way of, I feel, networking, because I'm also, I forgot to mention, a patient. How did I forget that? I have 2 autoimmune diseases, and actually one of my staff who's here as well, Jennifer, she's also a patient, and we helped her get her card through APA. So I feel like our companies are pretty tapped in with what's going on. We pay attention to everything that's going on.
How does the patient get compensated?
It depends on the study, right?
The one doing that on
I don't think they're getting compensated. No compensation for that.
Cannabis?
They have to, so for the CHOP study, they have to already be taking a product to be able to participate in that study. Yes. The pain study we're doing for the ASCM, we are giving the CBD out to the patients. It's gonna be a full spectrum and an isolate, double-blind study. So what that means is double-blind, it's like closing your eyes and you don't know what you're taking. You either get pill bottle A or pill bottle B. We know what A or B is. So that's what I mean about double-blind. So in that study, we're giving the product for free. Other studies do comp the patients, and usually it's done by gift cards. That's how you do it. You give them a gift card.
Do they have to come into a facility or is it all done electronically?
No, they have to come. Most studies that we run, you have to come into a facility.
For blood and
Right, it depends. Like the pain study, we're not pulling blood, that's just an observational. Once you start pulling blood, you have to file an IND, an investigational new drug application with the FDA. So when you're just sticking your toe in the pond to see if it works, for the first study, it's an observational and we don't take blood. The next study, then that's when you consider, okay, I should file an IND and you move down that pathway.
And then all these reports being filed, like, public to see what you're finding out?
So clinical studies, you have to file the findings of the study, whether it's positive or negative, so that the public will know. And how you find, actually, if you want to find studies, go on clinicaltrials.gov and type in the word medical cannabis or CBD, and you'll find all kinds of studies in there, or PubMed, that's where our publications go, and you can search there free, and you'll be able to see some publications there as well. But we have to share the data. That's, you have to do it. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, with the autism study, I know someone wants to enroll to a trial,
Mm-hmm.
and I know they're gonna be, a little worried about doing cannabis. Would you do that with CBD as well, or autism?
I have to look at the inclusion, exclusion, but I think it's cannabis, just
And
cannabis.
she already has been on cannabis before she was doing this stuff.
Well, she could also take Hope from Ilera. Not that I'm trying to shamelessly plug Dari over here, but we work closely with Ilera, so they could take Hope. It's the Children's Hospital study for Zelda, and they can take Hope. Hope is one of the approved products that they could take to be in that study, and it's a tincture under the tongue.
Oh, very nice.
And you can send me an email, so we can
And
talk.
I'm more buds now, so
Yeah.
I'll call my.
You know how to find me.
Yeah, and I'll go to Lear and grab mine.
My pleasure.
As you know, I don't know if this is exactly your field, but I have an autistic patient that is at middle school.
Uh-huh.
And the parent, she wants to start on medical marijuana, and they won't dispense it because of the federal. So how do you deal with that situation?
You're gonna have to make me come in and meet with them. When I come in, I'm usually wearing all black. Today I was nice and wore a blue and white pinstripe suit because I felt like it was more presidential. I don't know. My team always yells at me for not wearing colors. But no, I would meet with them and see what I could do to try and help them. Because if it's in a controlled setting, if a kid is taking a narcotic for some strange reason, or Adderall, whatever, at school, what do they do for those kids? It's under lock and key, so why wouldn't you do the same thing for a tincture? Seriously, just contact me, I'll see what I can do to help. I'm here to help. Alright, that's it? Oh, Diane.
Now this one go about helping you with your advocacy.
That's a good question. Jennifer's probably applauding over there. So Jen's the head of my fundraising for APA, and she helps us very, very, very closely. But just send me an email. Not me directly, info@affinitypatientadvocacy.org, not .com. But if you just pull up our website, it's on there. And then we reach out to the person who actually wants to help us. We just had another person come to us that's an ambassador. And so now she's gonna handle some of these requests that we get like this. She'll field it, because before, it was literally us, my board. My board's getting, Jennifer, everybody, we're all getting, we have to have some help. Because it's free, we don't charge to do this. So we have to fundraise. I don't even take a salary. As the CEO and founder of Affinity Patient Advocacy, my time is donated just like everybody else.
All right, cool. Thank you very much, Christina. Alrighty, so we are going to close out the evening with Charlana McKeithen. She is a deputy executive of Normal, New Jersey. Deputy executive director. Here we go. So come on up, and she'll give us some updates about what's going on in the cannabis industry and tell you a little bit about what she does.
Good evening. It's late, and I'll be brief, excuse me. Yes, I am the Deputy Executive Director for New Jersey Normal. I'm here because we need to promote the issues in the industry. We need to do it on a state and national level. Especially with 2020 elections coming up, we need regulation, legalization, and decriminalization. I want to congratulate Pennsylvania for your adding anxiety and Tourette syndrome as your qualifying conditions. I want to congratulate New Jersey on their medical marijuana expansion bill, and I want to congratulate Delaware for their juvenile decriminalization bill passed. It hasn't been signed yet, but it's coming. One of the other things that I do in this industry is help with visibility of Black and brown people. We are not having that in the industry right now, and we have to work a little harder to get that done. What brought me into this space is that I deal with severe depression, and also I have autoimmune disease. It was a point in my life where I could not leave the house. I was limited to the bed. I had no quality of life. I could not stand here by myself at one point, almost a year and a half ago. I'm now able to go to conferences. I've been traveling between New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, even to other states like Tampa. The problem that I've had is that I have to microdose. And it's hard to travel across state lines and not be able to microdose. So we have to get that done, decriminalization and legalization on on a national level. We have to. We have to get these states to pass better bills. We have to get patient access, lower prices, and, more visibility of minorities so that we can have opportunities to better our communities. I want to say thank you and have a good night.
Question for Charlana.
Question for Charlana.
I do. How does one get involved like that? I'm sure everybody would like to help in some way. I know maybe letter writing to legislators would be one thing, but what are some ways that people can get involved?
One of my goals is to get more information out. We have organizations like Normal, which is in every state. Some chapters are more active than others. We have Philly Normal here, Sharon with Inframed and Adaco, myself, New Jersey Normal. We have Delaware Normal. You look for organizations like that. You go out to one of their meetings or one of their events. Introduce yourself. Meet people. If you don't have a business card, don't hesitate to ask for business cards. There will be your pot of gold in this industry. Start looking go to your legislative websites, put in marijuana. You can pull up the bills. Start looking at the bills. They may seem confusing, but after you start glancing over them, they'll become a little bit more easier to understand. And if you need help, these organizations are here to help you with that. Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, folks, so that concludes CannaGather Philly 2. We are going to be back in August 8th. We are going to confirm these speakers soon, so keep an eye out for that. We expect to see everyone back, and we're going to keep growing this community that we're just going to keep building. Afterwards, we're going to have drinks at Creek Tavern right up the street. I have the walking map. You can also just follow me. But I'm going to close with Diane.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming out, especially in this lousy weather. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. What I'm going to do is put together a survey and start sending it out after each event so you guys can let us know what type of topics you would like to hear about. And we will do our best to get speakers in to address those topics. And please stop down at the tables before you leave. If you haven't talked to Donko or Minorities for Medical Marijuana, please grab some of their info, grab Normal's info, see how you can get involved in the industry and how if we all unite, we can get these bills passed and we can get people out of jail for plants and people can have their medicine. That's like my goal. My daughter is a patient and that's why I advocate and I want to get more involved. And I think if we all take a stand, we can really make things change. And thanks for coming out.